1 minute, literally, so that we have enough time to have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Andrea, please.
So first of all, thank you so much for the nice discussion, Joao and CK. And again, like, thank you so much to the organizer, especially Jim and John. They did an amazing job to organize this conference. Yeah, thank you so much for the comments. I just want to briefly address one of the comments of Joao, the one on why do zombie firms are not able to substitute credit with not inspected banks. The reason is when a loan is reclassified as a non-performing, it's becoming public information to the banks. So banks do know that that company is in some kind of troubles, and that's probably the reason why zombie firms are not able to, substitute the credit, and the total credit goes down. But again, like, we can talk about this offline. I want to thank you again, like, for the time and the nice comments.
Thank you. Remy.
Well, I also want to thank you both for the great discussions. It really has added a lot to what to how we think about this study and what we would do in the future to do additional work. I do want to mention, with this paper, the biggest challenge for us has been trying to understand why lending to minorities increases in this setting. And therefore, your comments are really helpful in helping us frame that better. I want to quickly respond to one thing that Joao, you mentioned, which is that in this setting where you're looking at enforcement actions, looking at minority lending is not the most obvious thing, and we agree with that. In fact, that's not how we started the project. We simply started by trying to understand how the enforcement action disrupts the bank, how it disrupts its lending and deposit activities, and what implications that might have for competition. But we did stumble upon this result, and so we went down the lane of trying to understand why we see this. And it is a surprising result. We did not expect to find it, but given that we have, our efforts have been towards understanding why it is that we find this result, and we believe that might have some implications for policy making here. So thank you both for your comments. This has been really helpful.
Great, thank you both for sticking with 1 minute. Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'm looking, just want to remind everybody that they can post a question into the chat or raise your hand in the participants tab, and we'll get to those. I did have one question come in for Andrea that came directly to me in the chat, and I'll paraphrase. But Andrea, have you thought about the last 2 years during the pandemic, where bank supervisors have been almost entirely offsite due to COVID-19, and whether the paper could be extended in this very unique environment over the last 2 years? And it's an off the cuff question, but are there implications or extensions of the paper to the recent environment?
That's actually a great question. I actually, to be honest, I haven't thought about like this kind of implication of COVID and the lack of human interaction. I don't even, to be very frankly honest, I don't know if the inspections were still like on during the COVID, especially because Italy was hardly hit by the COVID breakout. Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and we'll try to follow up on that. But I don't know the answer on top of my mind. Thank you.
Michael, any other questions coming in? If not, I'll
still waiting for them. So Joao, maybe this is, I know you had a few you wanted to get to as well. So why don't you ask one?
I think, again, if you could briefly, how do you interpret your temporary results? Both of you have these, and you really document there is an effect and then goes away. I guess some of this comes from what CK mentioned. There is the cleaning effect, but that has implications of how important are these. Any thoughts?
So maybe I can go first. I think, Joao, when you when you mentioned temporary effects, in our paper, you're talking about the deposit and the lending effects. Is that right? And that's a good question. I mean, in our mind, it's probably the enforcement action itself, the processes that change at the bank that then allow the EDO bank to recover. It could also be that the regulators impose certain restrictions on lending and risk taking during an EDO. Whereas after that, those restrictions go away and then you see an increase in loans. We haven't, of course, dealt with that in the paper, and so we will do that. So thank you for your comment.
Andrea, briefly.
Yeah, in my case, I think like the temporary effect in the aggregate lending is driven by the capital shock that the banks suffer, because once you have an inspection, you need to reclassify some loans. You have to put aside some resources for potential losses. So these decrease capital, and unless you raise capital immediately to counteract the negative effect, you need to just drop the lending in the short term. But like in the medium term, what I find is that banks raise more capital as a result of this inspection in the medium term.